Well, in dark times, courage shines. During the World War, a Dutch woman named Miep Gies helped German diarist Otto Frank and her family hide from the Nazis for 2 years and preserved Anne's diary. Miep's story is now the subject of a limited series called A Small Light, which will premiere on National Geographic today and Disney Plus tomorrow, May 2nd. And I got to speak with one of the show's writers, Tony Phelan and American actor Liev Schreiber, who plays Anne's father, Otto Frank. And they told me what makes this series so interesting and unique.
Joan and I have always been interested in her ever since we saw a documentary back in '96 called Anne Frank Remembered about Anne and the diary and how Miep is the person who found it. And this little old woman was so compelling and so human that we started digging into her life. And we discovered these kind of big things about her, that she discovered the diary, that she was newly married and very young when she first started working for Otto, and that it was that we could tell a story, a coming-of-age story, to go in tandem with the coming-of-age story that we all know, of Anne on one side of the bookcase and Miep on the other. And then there was also this very compelling piece that Otto lived with Miep and Jan for 7 years at the end of the war. That these two people of different classes and different countries had gone from employer-employee to family by the end of the story. And just telling her story honestly and having it be full of life and humor and joy and hope, we think would bring it to an audience and get them engaged with it. I think the problem with a lot of historical drama is that it's stately and dusty and black and white and stylized, and we wanted to avoid all that and just get the characters there and see them in their normal everyday lives. And I think that makes what they did all the more remarkable.
And for Liev here, you playing the father of Anne Frank, I mean, what was that like for you, being a father yourself?
There's no denying that piece of protectiveness is central to a role like that, and you feel it very powerfully. I was very interested in those feelings of control and losing control, of being a man who's accustomed to being in control, having to yield so much control. I thought that was a really interesting dynamic, certainly for me and Belle to play with. To yield control to someone and have them give you back so much was kind of a wonderful, wonderful story.
I mean, for both of you, let's continue on with you, Liev. What attracted you to this film that made you want to say, yes, I want to be a part of this film? I mean, you also being, having Jewish blood as well.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really my Jewishness that made me interested in this. I think maybe it's part of my Jewish culture that my mother taught me to care about other people, regardless of race, creed, religion, or anything else. And maybe to that extent, I just felt like, given what's happening in the world right now, to tell a story about someone like Miep, who reminds us how hardwired we are to say yes to each other, to do the right thing, to make the right decision when the chips are down and the chips are falling all around us at this moment in history. It felt like a very timely story to tell, and Joan and Tony had figured out a very dynamic, humorous, and sexy way to tell it, and I wanted to be a part of it.
Wonderful. I mean, I love the way how you coined it. Very simple yet sexy, and it is a lot of things that we can actually.
Not many of us have much context for what these people went through. But we do have context for certain basic human needs and desires. And I think that's one of the tools that I think Tony and Joan used very successfully, was to play on human desire, human, we all know what it's like to be going through a tough time in a relationship. Not many of us know what it's like to have missiles hit our home. But if you then can get on board with I'm in a tough time in a relationship, or I'm deeply in love with this person, and have that be interrupted. What could possibly interrupt my obsession with this other person? Death and destruction. And how do you then respond to that is I think, an extraordinary lesson.
I mean, it's definitely a very powerful and compelling story that we have here, and you know, we're so lucky to be able to see this side being told. For you, Tony, I read somewhere, and I like how you coined it, was that Miep being so ordinary was actually her superpower.
Yes.
I mean, that is totally incredible.
Well, and one of the reasons why Belle is so perfect for this role is Miep herself is about 4'11" and went through life being constantly underestimated by people. And I think, you'll see in the show, but I think one of the reasons why she avoided arrest when everybody else was taken away was that they looked at her and they were like, she's just a secretary. We don't need to worry about her. That decision allowed her to keep the business going, allowed her to keep things financially on track, and most importantly, allowed her to preserve the diary for when Anne came back. And she used that to her advantage, her ordinariness. But I know, because she talked about it, she was constantly plagued with, have I done enough? Did I do everything I could do? And the funny thing is, she was intimidated by Anne. Anne was an intimidating person. She was this 13-year-old girl who knew exactly who she was, exactly what she wanted out of life. She knew she was a writer, and she was working on how she was going to maximize this experience. And for me, Miep was like, well, what am I but a secretary?
Yeah. Well, you know, without Miep, there would be no diary. We would never find out, you know, about the story of Anne Frank. Thank you so much to both of you for spending time with us here on New Day for CNN Philippines. All the best.
Thank you.